Carol, all right. When it's time, will you light the chalice? Will you come up and light? Do you know how to? Okay. So you push this so the light comes on, and then you push that forward. No, it'll automatically. You can turn it off if you want. I'm going to ring this bell. I'm not feeling that aggressive, but that's how the second ring went. Please join in singing our gathering song. There's More Love Somewhere, number 95, in your gray hymnal. Welcome to our service this morning here at the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. For the first time, I am not standing on the little stool because the legs were lowered on our thing. So if you can't see me, I'm happy to stand on the stool. It's still here, but if otherwise, the camera and everything is fine. You don't even know what the worship team talks about at our meetings, but these are some of the things. My name is Ellen Flight, and I'm a member of the worship team. This morning's service is presented by Reverend Tricia Hart, one of our interim ministers who will be with us until June of this year. Welcome to those of you here who've braved the single-digit temps like hardy Vermonters, and those attending on Zoom, and those who will be joining sometime in the future when they watch it from our website. We have hearing assistants available in the rear at the tech table. And if you are here for the first time, an especially warm welcome to you this morning. We hope that you will fill out a blue card in the foyer and then join us downstairs for our social hour at the Ann Ross Fellowship Hall. That is a time when we gather as a whole community, adults and children, to socialize, catch up with one another, and welcome our visitors into fellowship. So there are 3 different cards, all color-coded for your convenience. The aforementioned blue. A pink card if somebody or you or someone you know needs some care from our caring network, maybe now or as a heads up for the future. And a yellow card for milestones and passages, which will be collected in the offering plates later in the service. Starting this year, we wanted to take time each week to give kudos to one of the teams that helped make Cvuus thrive. We'd like to thank the facilities team this week. If you are warm in our space today, you can thank them for all the work that has gone into over many, many years to bring reliable heating and now cooling to our spaces, heat pumps, etc. This is just a small portion of what the facilities team has done since we began worshiping in our own buildings, and so we hearty thank you to all who have served and are serving on our facilities team. Early last week, I listened to the Democratic senator from Georgia, the Reverend Raphael Warnock, who also serves as senior pastor of Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, the church that was once led by Martin Luther King Jr. He was speaking from Minneapolis, where he had gone with hundreds of other religious leaders, including over 100 UU ministers, 20 of whom Tricia knows personally, she said. More than that. What struck me was his call for the ministry of presence, of holding space for and supporting our neighbors. The term emphasizes offering comfort and love through simply being with someone rather than using words or offering advice, often described as a quiet presence or holding space in difficult times. As many of us wonder or struggle with what we can do, this idea of being present and holding space seems to offer opportunities for many ways to participate. Each week we acknowledge that we gather on the unceded lands of the Nahigan band of the Acoustic Abenaki Nation, one of 4 groups often referred to as the Western Abenaki people. I was thinking about our Abenaki neighbors this week as I read an article in the New York Times titled, "For Minneapolis's Native Americans, a new fight echoes a bitter history." Because ICE is picking up and detaining people often based on the color of their skin, local members of the Dakota tribe, whose spiritual home and tribal lands include Minneapolis, have been being picked up and taken to the Whipple Federal Building, headquarters of the immigration operation there. This building is near the historic site of Fort Snelling. This site is where 1,600 Dakota were held in horrible and deadly conditions by the U.S. federal government after what the U.S. government referred to as the Uprising of 1862, which was a treaty dispute between the 2 nations. Ultimately, 38 Dakota warriors were publicly hanged, the largest mass execution in U.S. history, ordered by Abraham Lincoln. While burlap hoods were being put over their heads just before their execution, the Dakota warriors sang one of their songs. Similarly, as 30-year-old Sophie Watso, an artist from the Metawakanton Dakota tribe, was being driven to the detention center last week after ICE's vicious attack of her person, she sang a native song of hope and healing. She said, "I knew where I was going, my ancestors were there. I wanted them to hear me." This morning's service will be a little different from our other services. It is titled, "What is Your Question?" And today you have an opportunity to pose questions for Reverend Tricia. It is not quite Stump the Minister, though there could be a flavor of that. We'd like a variety of questions. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, there will be cards available a little later in the service, and our helpers, Karen and Evan and Jake, are going to bring cards around for those of you who raise your hand. And then we'll sort of gather the cards and check to see if there's duplicates, and we'll then ask them from the cards to Reverend Tricia. Now, we're not sure how this is going to go. It may be slightly imperfect, but, that's how things go with some spontaneity. And we'll get to as many as we can. Now, if everyone in this room asked a question, we would be here way too long. So there'll be a cutoff period, and we'll try to, clump them accordingly. And so if you don't have a question, you just want to listen to the ones others have, that's fine too. So we need some questions. And we have some seeded questions that we'll start with, just so you can see the kind of questions that you might ask. Okay? So, is there anything that I should say before we do the chalice lighting? Okay, so our chalice lighting this morning is in your order of service and on the screen. And Carol Harden is, are you still chair of the music committee? Not exactly. Well, she's very involved. So she is going to light our chalice, and if you will join me, may this hour of tender and courageous connection help us fall again in love with this wild world. May it reignite our trust that the path ahead will be gentle. May it lure us back to belief and always returning light.
Some of you may be familiar with the work of the Reverend Lynn Unger. She is a poet and posts on public media, and she actually gathered together a collection of her poems. She put them out on Facebook, and I'm not sure where else. And in the quest that she has and I have and lots of us have about what can we do in this current moment, what Lynn suggested is use these poems however you like them, and then contribute to one of the many organizations which is actually doing direct aid, help, food, groceries, travel to people in Minneapolis who are afraid to leave their homes, which I thought was a brilliant idea, and it also gave me the treat of reading a couple of dozen of Lynn's poems. So I'm going to read one of them to you as our opening words today. She calls it Joy, and it might or might not matter for you to know that dogs are a very important part of Lynn's life and her household. Joy. I don't need to tell you this world is hard and getting harder. We thought it would be better than this. More sensible, more neatly worked out, more righteous, according to our impeccable analysis of what righteousness should look like. And yet, here we are. No good pretending it isn't both a slog and a crisis, which is to say, wearing on every last nerve. And still, when you least expect it, you find yourself ambushed by Joy, who, tail whipping and ears slicked back to her head, launches herself into your lap, leaving you breathless and covered with kisses.
The first question for Reverend Tricia this morning is, you've been a minister now for 30 years, and I'm curious what you have noticed has changed perhaps the most, or has had a dramatic change since you were first a minister, a UU minister.
I got the qualifying, Ellen, there. When does one become a minister? And truthfully, if you date it from when the Ministerial Fellowship Committee saw me in an interview and said yes at the end of it, that was in 1998. So I think it's only 28 years. So I have more to learn. A number of you already know the answer to this, so I'm going to ask you of what's changed in the last few decades. Some of you are new, and you maybe don't, but some of you remember when we found out what was happening in our congregations through what we called the newsletter. Remember that? But do you remember the ancient days of the newsletter when, how often did it come out? Once a month. Lots of older congregations actually had newsletters once a week or twice a month. And one of the first jobs I had, some years actually, even before I went to seminary, I was working part-time in the office, and my job was running the newsletter off on the Gestetner Museum, I mean, it was horrible. Okay. So if you think back to the fact that incredibly labor-intensive process, because of course it wasn't just, that was the second to last step, because the last step was actually putting the addresses on. Where do you get the information? How did information come into the minister, the person in the office? How did we know? How did we know? Sorry? You know, it definitely happened. One of the earliest lessons I learned as a minister a few years later was when people try to tell you something after the service, never tell them that you will remember it. And it's actually ideal, it's best to not even take a piece of paper on which they have helpfully written the thing, because I will put it down someplace and lose it. So if you think about how communication has changed, that is just one enormously different area. I also remember the email wars. Anybody else? Maybe this didn't happen here. Dorothy knows, David knows. Because once people had email, when was that? In the 90s? In the 90s, okay. Once people had email, that meant that we all felt we had a captive audience of everybody we might know the addresses of, at which we could hold forth at length about things like, oh, I don't know, the height of the pulpit could have been one, or yes. So the email wars were trying to get people to calm down and stop writing these very, very long emails. But email is an essential part of things, but email is not even close to the top of all the ways that we communicate with one another. There was a time, long before I became a minister, when the expectation was that the minister would sit, usually smoking a pipe, in his study for 6 days of the week and think serious thoughts. And read books and occasionally call on people. And then as a result of all of that work, the minister, he would show up and hold forth. Actually, in the old days, for an hour and a half. So if you ever think the service is too long, you could think back to that. But that was a very long time about. So it is remarkable to me how I'm going to use the word democratized communication has become in very imperfect and messy ways, but really important ways. There are actually lots of ways in which people in the congregation can communicate with each other, can ask each other questions, can put out news of something important. And we do it very imperfectly, and ministers do it very imperfectly too. But in that one area, nothing, almost nothing in the realm of communications is the same now as it was 40 years ago, or in my case, 30.
Hello. So my question is, what has been the most difficult situation you've encountered working as a minister in your 28 years?
Thank you, Karen. You should know that Ellen told me her question last week, so I thought about that, and Karen told me this question about 10 minutes ago. I don't know what any of the other questions are. And I had to pause a bit to decide whether I should actually talk about the most difficult thing that's ever happened to me in my ministry, and I think I should, because that was your question. You all know, because I tell you all the time, that CVUUS is the 10th congregation that I've served in some capacity or another in the last 28 years, because I've done almost exclusively and intentionally transitional ministry, short-term ministry. The one exception to that, when I was called as the minister, I was called to a congregation that was known to be a place where conflict frequently was the norm. And I knew that. I knew that going in. The search committee knew it. We talked about it at some length. And we tried, Peter and I served this congregation together, we tried very hard to be calm, be happy, be not reactive when things came up, and to some extent we succeeded, but clearly to some extent we didn't. And there were major concerns in that congregation about money. I'm going to try not to look at you, Steve. And the way the story ends is that we lost our job after 7 years. Peter and I were asked to leave, and we did. But the years leading up to that were really hard, and the hard part was that I thought I understood financial stuff and stewardship stuff pretty well. I actually understood the financial situation that church was in, at least I thought I did. And I had a much more optimistic view than the people who were very concerned in that congregation. And that's what the conflict was about. The conflict was not really about money. It was about belief in, is there enough money for us to do what we're doing now and more? Or, in fact, are we right on the edge of financial disaster? And I took, because I thought I was supposed to, I took the side of, it's going to work out, and here are the reasons why. And my saying that over and over again in various ways made the people who disagreed with me more and more convinced that I was wrong. Because that's how people are. They didn't initially think I was a terrible person. That came later. But they just thought I was wrong. They thought I was wrong. And I didn't get this. I didn't fully understand. Maybe I still don't. But I think I came to understand after I left what the problem was, that my being more optimistic than some people meant that I was criticizing those people. Even if I wasn't. Even if I didn't feel that way in my heart. Though maybe I did a little bit. You know how these things go? And what's amazing is how large a disagreement can become when people feel not understood. I felt misunderstood. Ministers get misunderstood all the time, but the people who were mad at me felt that I wasn't taking them seriously. That was really hard for me, and I learned an enormous amount from it. Thanks for the question.
So what will happen next is we're going to do the offering, and while the offering happens, our helpers are going to be bringing around cards, and you can take a card and write a question, then give it back to them, so that by the time we get to the end of the song from You I Receive, we have all the cards back, and then we'll just go to the foyer for a little bit to sort the cards, and then when Tricia's finished with milestones and passages and pathways connections, we will have the cards, your questions ready to ask. Okay?
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Enough? Great.
Great. So
Let me introduce the offering, because I actually have a note from Tom that I got last night. We take up an offering every week and share the generosity of all of you to both keep the congregation alive and warm and going, and also to be able to give away half the money to organizations frequently in the community that are doing the work that our values tell us is really important. And the beneficiary, the donee right now, is Green Mountain Justice. Some of you know something about it, but I wanted to pass along what Tom sent to me has happened, that Green Mountain Justice has been working on in just this past week of bitter cold. Vermont's UU Community Ministry, that's what we think of as Green Mountain Justice, sheltered hundreds of Vermont's most vulnerable neighbors through our state and Vermont Interfaith Action Partnerships. He wrote 630, and then he said, actually, some of those people have come back night after night after night, but there were 630 beds in Vermont for people to be warm in the midst of the brutal cold. And Green Mountain Justice is running those with help this year. They also distributed buddy heaters. Somebody's going to have to you're going to tell me what that is, David, right? Buddy heaters? He doesn't know either. Okay. Empower coats, grocery cards, tarps, and dog coats to neighbors living outside. I love the dog coats. That's really great. They stopped an involuntary eviction, mediated with the nonprofit landlord, and secured housing for a neighboring family. They provided rides to medical appointments and grocery stores through our neighbor care neighbors, advocated for a single mom who's dealing with a rat infestation in her nonprofit-owned apartment, and launched our Green Mountain Justice Neighbors Matter Council, so disenfranchised neighbors can guide our work toward equity and justice. Tom isn't here this morning because the extreme cold weather shelters were open again last night, but he and Irina and the kids send love and light and gratitude. Your gifts make a difference, and they will now be most gratefully received. I have one. Is the mic on? Abby, could you give me the mic back? Thank you. One yellow card was received from Anne Friedrichs, who asks that we keep her brother Tom Friedrichs close to our hearts today. He died Thursday. His position as elder in our family of over 70 siblings, partners, children and grandparents, children and grandchildren, will never be filled. Since our childhood, he was my safety, my caregiver, the brother who listened, asked questions, and cared for each of us. I'm wondering how many of us have called to mind the person in our family, perhaps no longer with us, perhaps still being the center of everything. Let us be quiet just for a moment and call those people and other precious ones to mind. So, in this time in which we live, in which communication is the thing that we do in all the different ways we do it, it's important that you know that there are a bunch of different ways that any and all of us can be connected, better connected to each other and this community. And in case you don't know and haven't looked yet, the other side of your order of service is important, and it's kind of especially important on the first of the month because Laura always shifts her focus. So there's a lot in February, and some of it is mentioned right here. The couple of special things to mention are that the Death Cafe online is coming back this year. Christina is leading that. The information is here and at the website on the second Wednesday of the month, January through May. We announce this a lot, but it's always still true that the Charter House meal prep people could use more help in person and in making cookies, and we hope that you will consider doing that. On Valentine's Day itself, Saturday, February 14th at 7 in this sanctuary, there will be an open mic night. Anybody ever performed or offered anything in an open mic, Francois? Oh, my goodness, my goodness. So if you didn't put your hand up, maybe this year is the year that you do it. Steel drum lessons will be happening on Wednesdays throughout March. You can talk to Jen if you want to, or register online. Game nights always happens on the third Friday of the month with a potluck beforehand. It's great fun and gathers Middlebury's drop-in living room, welcomes guests on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And if they need help in hosting with that, so you can find out more. Oh, and some of you may have been greeted, as I was, with one of the bright yellow handouts that lists the food, the kind of food, when you came in this morning, that is especially appropriate and much needed in the community cupboard. There's a grocery basket in the lobby, and if you go to the grocery store ever in your life and can pick up a couple of extra things, it would be wonderful. It would be very important. We can all do that. All right. Wait. Our sorting people are still in the lobby. So we could give them more time and we could sing the hymn now. Let's do that. Let's sing We Are a Gentle, Angry People. I think you all gave our sorters a hard job, but here they come.
It's very clear we have lots of thoughtful people in our midst. Makes it very difficult to sort. But here's a good one to start with. What happens when we die?
I have sermons on this, and I don't have any of them with me. Where's Joan? Okay, Joan actually gave me some wisdom this morning. It's a quote from Judith Viorst, and it goes something like this: "In the meantime, be glad you're alive." No, I didn't get it right. Okay. In the meantime. Oh, better. Better. Okay, just in case, and to make sure that the Zooming people hear it, in the meantime, enjoy not being dead. It is, okay, clearly impossible, and people have been struggling with this forever. I don't actually think this is a terribly subtle question in any religious tradition that I know about, and certainly not the one that I grew up with, Catholicism. I think, though, it's not a bad question to think about and to figure out what makes sense to you as you enjoy not being dead.
So I have two questions because we felt they were related. So I'm going to read them both. With your experienced eye, what is our CVUS's greatest strength and greatest weakness? And also, when you leave us in June, how will you remember CVUS? What stands out?
Okay. Those really are the same question, so thank you for putting them together. It's probably obvious to many of you, this place where we are right now is an extraordinary asset for this congregation. I've worked in a lot of different buildings in these 10 congregations that I've served, and they've all had lovely things about them. But this particular building, which I've been told many times by many of you, was designed to be a welcoming place, not just for the people who are members of the congregation, but for others who come in. You succeeded in that. Many of you were involved. Many of you helped to make it happen in different ways. And I just think it's important not to miss the significance. Because if you think about it, if you think about the other Unitarian Universalist congregations in the state of Vermont, for example, there aren't any that look like this. There are some lovely, lovely buildings. So the question is not the building, it's what you do with the building. And that is actually not a straightforward or simple answer. I will tell you, though, that I think it is a great strength that everything that's on the Pathways to Connection and the calendar for this building and that building is very full. And Laura's job, which is often to make it all fit in somehow, is an impossible one and a difficult one. And she's happy to do it because she understands that, sorry, Laura, to be speaking for you when you watch this, but she understands that that welcome and that opening to the community is an essential part of what CVUS is and tries to be and do. And so that is a great strength, and there's more work to do. So hey, facilities got thanked earlier in the service. I want to say that the amount of work that's been done on Fen House, exterior and interior this year, is another way of making the building, that building too, welcoming and useful and safe and lovely. So that's, I know you all are a little allergic to talking about growth for various reasons. I won't call it a weakness, it's just not a common habit that you all think about that, but I think the potential for growth in this congregation is real and exciting and happening to some extent. And the building has a lot to do with it. The welcoming nature of the congregation does as well. So, weakness. That was the word, right, Evan? It's maybe a silly thing that people do to talk about congregations as if they had one attitude or approach to things. Obviously, it's many, many people bringing that together. I sometimes wish that CVUUS was a little braver and bolder than you are now. And one of the reasons that I think you're not always as brave and bold and clear and quick to make decisions is because you really don't want to be pushy or upset anybody or create a conflict, because that can happen too. Balancing that is hard, and an important thing that that congregations, all congregations struggle with. Well, that's not true. The ones that don't struggle with it have given up being bold and brave and just kind of think they're nice on Sundays. That's not who you are. But how do you take what you believe and care about and put it into action in every aspect of what you do? That's a hard question, but the boldness is actually part of what is motivating. So a little more boldness, maybe. Oh, what am I supposed to? What I'm going to remember? What am I going to take with me? All those things. All of that. Yeah, yeah. And the pulpit got lowered. It's so cool. Johanna tells me that, in fact, Johanna, where are you? You're right there. Didn't you tell me that discussions about lowering the pulpit have been happening for quite a number of years? So it was a pulpit designed for Johanna, and they measured her, which was great, and either you shrank a lot in a short period of time, or anyway. But now it's right. It's not. Yes. Sorry, Karen. Go ahead.
Please tell us about your stole and the symbols on it.
Okay. Well, in order to do that, I have to tell you something about shared ministry. This stole was actually not made for me. This was made for Peter, my dear husband, who may or may not be watching right now. And he's very kind to let me wear it as much as I do. I just wear a lot of black and gold, and I like it. This was made by that same congregation that got mad at us and fired us, actually, later. That's interesting and worth noticing, isn't it? Sorry? They did understand symbolism. Maybe so. It was on Peter's being granted final fellowship, full fellowship with the UUA. You get that preliminary yes, and then you have to go through years of reviews and stuff before they say, okay, now you're really done. Oh, and there's lots more you have to do. But anyway, this is symbols on one side of the world's religions, and on the other side, words. And the words are love, reason, community, dignity, freedom, truth, ethics, tolerance, unity, democracy. And I like it for all kinds of reasons, but not least because it stays in place, more or less.
Are you still often optimistic and grateful?
Am I still optimistic and grateful about life? About Unitarian I guess I get to answer that any way I want, don't I? Optimism is challenging these days, I find. I am deeply grateful for so many things in my life and in the work of ministry, which I love, and all the things that I'm continuing to learn. And I assume that I will continue to do that until I am dead. Optimism is something that I have definitely been accused of. And I think optimism or hope or faith, or however you want to put it, is deeply essential to hard times like this one that we're living in. I saw something. I've gone back to reading Facebook in the midst of all of this, and eventually I'll get off it entirely. But there's a lot on Facebook right now, especially from my colleagues and other UUs. And one colleague was remembering a speech that he heard recently from Bernice King, the oldest of Martin and Coretta's 4 children, who was listing things that are important to do in hard times. And one of them was, do not despair. Just don't. And don't sound like you are despairing, because that is exactly what those who are hurting us want, and in fact need. For us to give up, be depressed, figure out who we hate the most, all the terrible things that are happening and about to happen, all of that undermines the energy toward the good and the optimism and the hope and the love that we need. And I thought, yeah, that's a helpful little rule. Just don't show up in the world with your depression out front. Doesn't mean you don't have it, doesn't mean you don't need to deal with it, doesn't mean that we can't help each other with it, but optimism is a tool, and one that is important.
That might seg into this. Now that you'll be retiring, how do you feel about where your life is going from here?
Okay, most of you know that this is my second try at retirement, and I utterly and completely failed the first time, completely. I finished in Burlington in June of 2023, and I had signed a contract with Cvuus by the end of that week. I could blame it on Christina, but really, it's all me. And that's true because I love ministry, and also because I didn't know what my plan was. I didn't know what I wanted to do with the rest of this time that I'm not yet dead. I'm going to be quoting this a lot, Joan. I've made a resolution, like lots of people who are retiring do, as I understand it. I'm going to not say yes to any long-term commitment for at least 6 months or a year. I'm going to make space and see what I notice and see what seems important, and actually be more playful than I have been for the last many, 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 many years. So I could get back to you on that.
What has surprised you about ministry?
Well, actually, this one's easy. What surprised me about ministry is that I didn't know anything about it, as it turns out. I thought I did. I thought that because I was very active as a lay leader. I don't know, do we have any active lay leaders in this room? I spent 8 years in the congregation that I was a part of doing stuff and trying to put boundaries around that, and not succeeding very much. And I thought, when I finally said, okay, I'll go to seminary, I'll be a minister. I'll tell you one quick story about that in a sec, but I thought I had the tools that I mostly needed, because I thought that if anything, congregations need the wisdom. They need to acknowledge the wisdom and experience and good humor and ideas, creativity of the lay people who are the life of the congregation. Ministers just don't know enough, and besides, they're sometimes kind of tedious and boring, and you need people's ideas. And so I wrote all my essays about how I was bringing all this expertise in, and it turns out that ministry is a whole lot more interesting and unpredictable and beautiful and surprising and frustrating than I had any idea. The thing about being a minister is that when somebody approaches you and says, "Can I talk to you?" the answer is always yes. It may not be yes this minute, but it's always yes. I had never lived my life that way before. I didn't know much about death. I didn't know how to do rites of passage. I didn't know the unpredictability of what happens in this space, so I was surprised. But the story that I will tell you is that my former husband and I went out to dinner once. We had 3 children under the age of 8, 9, something like that. We didn't go out to dinner very often. And in the year of when I tortured everyone with the question of whether I ought to just go to seminary and maybe become a minister, I, of course, was going on and on while we were out to our lovely dinner about whether I ought to do this. And I said to Andrew, I said, you know, the thing is, if being a minister meant talking to people and meeting with people who are at transition points in their lives, I would do it in a minute. But all the other stuff, the board meetings and the stewardship and the finance and the conflicts and the facility, all of that. And he looked at me and he said, "Wait, let me get this straight. You are willing to volunteer years of your life doing all that stuff, but you don't want to get paid for it." That's what he said. And I said, "Oh." And I called up Andover Newton Theological School the next morning. And yeah, the rest is history. And I have thanked Andrew many times for that wisdom. So we probably, can we do one more? Okay.
When will you be able to dance again? Because we miss your dancing.
Okay, well, my surgeon tells me that I'm supposed to not, it's going to be a year. So I kind of don't like thinking about whether that's a year from the first operation, which was the end of May, or the second operation, which was the beginning of August. But anyway, sometime this summer. Oh, Karen is asking me for a commitment, but I would have to check my schedule because I'm not committing to anything. But really appreciate the invitation. You know, I'm wondering something. I'm wondering if, because you have a couple of questions to take with us. Can we just do them now? Because really, they're not just for me; they're for all of us, I think. And then we can sing Woya Ya and not have a ridiculously long service. Would that be okay? Unless it's a one-word answer. Probably
no.
not.
Some congregations do joys and concerns like we used to. Now we do milestones and passages. Which one do you prefer and why?
Oh my goodness. All right, this really is a question for all of you, but I will answer it. What I prefer is something that CVUS only does occasionally, which is some sort of a not out loud ritual where people put a stone in a sand garden or in water or something. And I prefer it, and there may be another way for people to write down a concern that gets shared some way. But I love that model because everybody gets to participate, including the kids. Anything? I think Evan has just been drafted and he didn't know.
Please speak about freedom of the pulpit and how far it extends beyond the actual pulpit.
Oh. I learned something when I was serving a very old congregation in Massachusetts that has something to do with where this tradition of the freedom of the pulpit comes from. In the years of the American Revolution, ministers, the meeting houses in the towns in Massachusetts and perhaps other places too, were where the ammunition was stored. Frequently underneath the pulpit, which would built up, with a dirt floor, that's where the ammunition and sometimes the rifles were stored. Now, there was an idea that this was maybe safer and everybody knew they were there, and so, but still, it's quite an interesting idea that when you're the minister and in the pulpit, you are standing on ammunition. You have power there that you need to respect and care about. And that the congregation, at least in our tradition, gives that freedom to its minister. I was going to say called minister, but really to its minister. And it is risky. It is a powerful thing that our ancestors decided made sense. We're going to ask this person not just to listen to us and to lead worship and to do all the other things, but actually be brave enough to say what they believe is true. And that the congregation can fire the minister for various reasons, but not for what they said, at least in theory. At least in theory. And how far it extends beyond the pulpit, though, does the minister walk around in the world with that freedom to say anything they want and represent the congregation in doing so? I would say not so much. Sometimes maybe if they're in that official role, but I don't, and others may help me understand that I'm wrong about this. But it's a very powerful thing, and we're not quite sure how to do it well. We're not quite sure how to do it well. I will say, no extra pressure, search committee. Because what you are helping the congregation to do is to choose that person whose wisdom and voice you're going to trust. It's a big deal. And there's lots more to say, but not right now. One more, and okay, I won't. God, Ellen, that's really hard for me. Okay, we'll have one more question. I will be quiet, and then we will sing Moyea.
American citizens have been able to end the life of other Americans with no legal consequence. We always said it can't happen in America, but it did. Is there any role for the church? Do we have any recourse?
I just have to say yes. Is there a role for the church? Yes. Hell yes. Thank you, Dorothy. Because and we're enjoying not being dead yet. Let us enjoy singing. Woyaya is the song. It's actually from West Africa, and it's a fabulous one to sing, and you shouldn't stand still while you're singing it. Please do. Rise in body or spirit. closing words are from the poet Rosemary Watola Trommer. I want to give you what I could not give you, a world where there is no hurt or grief. Because I cannot give you this, I want to give you the certainty that you can live fully in a world where there is hurt and grief, that you can meet what is most painful and at the same time turn toward what is beautiful. I want to give you the belief in your resilience, want you to know yourself as a flower that grows more vigorously after it's been cut back. Would you say the words that we say when we extinguish the chalice? Thank you, Ellen. We extinguish this flame, remembering always to keep love at the center.
I'm still cold.
Wool.
Whoa.
You wear wool.
Yeah, I think so. All right.
Ready?
Yep. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn through the storm, through the night. Lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my life grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my kind is almost gone, then I cry, hear my call, hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When the darkness appears and the night draws near, alone. Leave your child